Salutations, and welcome to the show that no one saw. I'm Elias, and I'll be your host this evening. Some of you may not know this, but I am actually a comic artist. It's most of what I'm doing here at school, though I don't often get an opportunity to share it with you all. Recently, though, I was assigned a 6-page mini-comic that I thought could make a short enough video. The comic is based off of the song The Devil Wears a Suit and Tie by Coulter Wall. It's a favorite of mine. I love the lyrics and the story, and I was really excited to work on it. So without further ado, let's start the show. What I'm starting out with here are thumbnails. For those of you who are not really involved in the comic or art world, thumbnails are small, loose drawings that help you plot out the way that your pages or final image are going to look. Usually for me, this involves plotting out the panels and then filling them in. I tend to have a better sense of space once I've filled in the panels on the page. The story behind this song is that of a man meeting the devil at a crossroads and offering his soul in exchange for guitar lessons. It is one of many in the Devil Went Down to Georgia archetype, but there's something very dark and desperate about the tone of the song that makes it feel that much more unique within the genre. I wanted to imitate that feel in the artwork, and so I'm using these sharp angles and harsh spot blacks to give it somewhat of a brooding aura. Now I'm moving over the thumbnail for the cover to the final page template. The devil doesn't look anything really but human in the comic proper, but for the cover I wanted a more striking visual, so I went with the classic goat head. I also wanted to take advantage of the setting and give him a proper Southern gentleman's bolo tie as opposed to a regular business tie. Right about here you can see me filling in those dark spot blacks that I was talking about earlier and testing out the red that I wanted to use for the cover when it was printed. From there, we move on to the first page. As you can see here, I'll load my thumbnails in as a sketch layer, but if they're not specific enough, or if I'm having a hard time inking over them, I'll go in and pencil on top of the thumbs to give myself more specificity to work off of. Usually I'll start with the easier panels, especially if I'm feeling intimidated by a project, and I was feeling intimidated by this project. In my art, I tend to draw women more than men. They've just always been easier for me. I was concerned that I would have a hard time portraying two men from so many different angles, and especially two men with facial hair, because that's something I'm also really not that adept at. But I figured I'm in school for a reason, and that's to learn, and what better opportunity will I have to try and strengthen a skill that I don't already possess. So that's what led me here. At first, with this microphone, I tried to draw in all this individual texture, but when you're pulled out like this, you can see it doesn't really look great. And since I would be printing this on 5.5 by 8.5, it would be very, very small, and it would look more like a gray than it would like a texture. This was pointed out to me during critique, and I end up going back and filling it in with a different texture that looks much better when printed smaller. With regards to the other panels, I was able to figure out the microphone just by looking at some reference, because it's mostly just lines in this style. There wasn't a lot of inner mechanics to work out because the lighting was so heavy and the form was so thin. It mostly just ended up as spot blacks. The stool and the guitar were giving me a little more trouble than I had anticipated, and eventually I ended up grabbing some assets off of the Clip Studio asset store and using those as a quick and easy way to get good perspective on such a tight deadline. All that was left at that point was to kind of fill in the little details, like the way the clothes are folding, the spot blacks on the outside, which were just so much fun. I've been having a lot of fun with these like dark, harsh spot blacks lately. It's such a different vibe, but it makes me feel so professional doing it, and it's something I've been experimenting with lately, and I'm very excited to show y'all as my speed paints slowly roll out over time. Right about now you can see that microphone texture that I was talking about. Instead of that cross-hatched look, I end up going and looking at some references of actual microphones, and they have this chain link texture to them that I was able to do by just subtracting some of the ink from the microphone as opposed to adding a bunch. Now we're moving on to page 2, in which we actually flash back to the devil and what I'm calling Johnny because of the nature of the story. The devil and Johnny meeting at a crossroads. That's not really a crossroads. You can see he's kind of hitchhiking, and the devil's driving up in his Series 10 Cadillac, as stipulated by the song. That was actually a lot of fun to draw. Who knew that cars were fun if you didn't have to draw most of the car? That was a great chance for me to slip in a little Revolutionary Girl Utena reference. If you haven't watched that show, I highly recommend it. I also highly recommend checking out a trigger guide before you watch it because it deals with some pretty heavy stuff, but it is a genuine work of art. The devil is described in the song as wearing a cigar on his lip, an imagery which I really like because it describes him not as a smoker, but rather as someone who imitates the act of smoking. It makes him seem unhuman and uncanny. And I wanted to try and get that across, but I'm also just not someone who draws like cigarettes or cigars in general, so I was more worried about making it look like it was actually in his mouth. The interior shot of the car in panel 4, as you can see me working on right now, is one I was really excited about because of the intense perspective of it. I really liked that image of him stepping on the gas pedal. When I was looking at reference for this page, I found that Series 10 Cadillacs did not, in fact, match the gas pedals that I had drawn in my thumbnails. And at that point, I had to choose whether to rearrange the composition or to enrage some hypothetical car bros, and I unfortunately chose to enrage the hypothetical car bros. I encourage you to leave a comment if you are offended by this. I'd love to know if there's anyone out here who could have caught that. Now up on the first panel, you can see me doing that thing I was talking about earlier, where I sketch in a layer of pencils when needed. I felt that my perspective on the thumbnails was not very accurate to the camera angle that I was going for, and I was having a tough time inking on top of the thumbs, so I ended up penciling actually most of this page to get more specificity in my lines. You can see I even loaded in a 3D model to help me get that pose down for Johnny. It didn't work, really. The thing about 3D assets in general is that you load them in, but you really need to know what you're trying to draw, because 3D models are only as good as you are able to make them. If you don't understand what you're trying to draw with a 3D model, the 3D model won't help you understand it. It's just there to guide you. So oftentimes when I load in a 3D model, I'll try and trace it straight up, and then I'll remember that that doesn't look very good. And so I end up doing it over and over again, and oftentimes I end up just sort of giving up and figuring it out by myself. I had a lot more luck this go round with some of the assets, like the stool and the guitar from the first page. But the people models in Clip Studio are a little disjointed, especially around the shoulders. It looks like the character models from Volume 1 of Ruby. The beloved show for me, but the shoulders were never their strong suit. And that brings us to page 3, the fateful meeting between the two of them, and I'm already changing my thumbs here. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with those 3 panels on the right, so once I got it to scale and I was able to see about how big it would be on the physical page, I was able to sort of narrow down what exactly I wanted to do. I had a lot of trouble with that first panel because I wanted to show the action of the boot stepping out of the car, and I wanted the focus to be on the boot, and I was having trouble maintaining focus and that close-up on the boot while also making it clear that the boot was stepping out of the car. In the end, I thought I got it down pretty well, though. The full body shot was a big moment. When I was seeing this comic in my head before I started it, I had seen it in this very angular style that I didn't quite mimic in most of my final pages, but I channeled some of that energy into the character reveal of the devil here. You can see the way that his pant legs fall and the shape of his coat. It's much more shapely than most of Johnny's clothing. I wanted there to be a very sharp, almost uncanny feeling to him, much like the lyrics of the song say, sharp as a knife. For those of you theater heads out there, you might recognize the devil. He was heavily based on Patrick Page's performance as Hades in Hadestown. It's one of my favorite musicals, if not my favorite musical, and every time I thought about this comic or saw it in my head, I would always see him. I think his performance in that role has such a menacing but somehow comforting and a kind of southern feeling to it. That was exactly the energy that I was looking to channel with the devil, and so that was just a link that my mind couldn't erase as I was drawing this. And after some struggle with the 1 foot there, I had a lot of trouble with that one. I debated covering it up, but it didn't look quite right, and I really wanted some focus on those rattlesnake boots, so I had to tough it out and figure it out, but I think it turned out alright in the end. Now I'm just filling in those spot blacks, and I really think they just pull a page together, especially for a comic that's in black and white. It really made me feel like it was a finished product rather than just line art. Now we're on page 4. Again, I'm going for the easiest panels first. When you're cramming a comic like I did with this one, I think I did 5 pages in one day, which I could have used my time more wisely, but it was a pretty tight turnaround to begin with, considering it was finals week. Overall, this may well be one of the pages that I'm most satisfied with. I really love how the handshake turned out, and I think the only thing that tops it is what I end up doing with it on the next page, which you'll get to see shortly. I really struggled with that top panel of the two of them shaking hands. At one point I was like, should I even have them shake hands? Should I have them doing something else? I didn't know. I don't know what it was about it. I guess it's a gesture and angle that I had never really drawn before. I really wanted it to seem like Johnny was leaning his whole body into the handshake, and that was something I was having a hard time communicating while also seeming like the perspective was accurate. That combined with my difficulties just portraying the male form in general, I was having a really tough time of it, but I'm glad that I eventually got the hang of it because I think the panel turned out quite well, even if it didn't quite have the gesture that I was looking to communicate. I wanted the handshake, the sealing of the deal, to feel like it was in its own pocket of time, sort of like slow motion, and to communicate that, I filled the backgrounds of the pages in black to really contrast it from the naturalistic backgrounds of the other panels and to kind of tie it to what the background looks like when Johnny's in hell. Next up, we're finally seeing what I got to do with that handshake, and I just love the snake biting down. I end up going back and changing this bottom panel, but the top panel was just perfectly right at home for me. I love the coiling of the snake and the way it wraps underneath the devil's sleeve, and the little dribble of venom coming down from Johnny's arm. It was just such a fun panel for me to draw, and it's so gross. Originally, my idea here was to have it flash forward to Johnny playing kind of a packed restaurant venue, but as I messed with it, it just wasn't turning out the way I had hoped. It was really hard to pack the venue, and it was really hard to draw the angle that I wanted for the venue at all. And so I rethought my approach to the page and instead wanted to show kind of the aftermath of making that deal with the devil. And so you see Johnny's head get thrown back and overcome by magical energy. And as he drops to his knees, we get this sense of his soul leaving his body in that moment as the devil leans back and just enjoys a job well done. I also really enjoy just how those panels ended up turning out. I just liked them craftsmanship-wise a lot better than I did my attempts at the restaurant venue. I also think a restaurant venue is just not a very glamorous place to play in the context of having sold your soul to the devil for supernatural guitar powers. And now we get on to the final page, which, as I kind of let slip earlier, reveals that in the first page, Johnny had been performing for hell. He's recounting this tale of losing his soul to the devil because it's his eternal punishment. We focus in on this moment of pause with the guitar, which I actually took reference from a video of Coulter Wall playing this live. I don't think the fingering is quite accurate because he has one of those capos on his guitar, so I don't think Johnny's playing the right chord here, but I can pretend. I think I put quite a bit of detail into it for someone who's never really held a guitar in their life. I was very happy with the next panel, how I was able to draw that out from imagination, primarily due to my experience with the 3D asset in the first page. I kind of had a sense of the scale compared to the body, the proportions of the guitar, where the neck ends. That was very helpful. And now we're finally getting to the big reveal panel, which I love drawing gross, messed up zombie faces. It's something that's so satisfying because it doesn't have to be anatomically accurate because they're gross and they're messed up and they're melting and they've got all this gross ooze on them, and it's just a lot more fun to have fun with it. I also really love the pained expression that I was able to convey on his face. I think there's a real sense of regret there. Then in the last panel, we kind of zoom out and really cement that he is dead and in hell, and he's been playing for this horde of demons who are all kind of reveling in his suffering. And it's a pretty wicked ending. I'm really pleased with how I interpreted that. I enjoy how I was able to package it in this very concise setting. All in all, I'm very pleased with how this comic came out. It was quite a big challenge for me between the main characters and the guitar and the facial hair and the car, but it really just turned out quite well, and I'm super proud of it, and all as a love letter to a song that I enjoy so much. I listened to it so much while I was drawing this, and I listened to it so much after. It's just a great song, and I'm so excited I had the opportunity to adapt it to comic form. If you enjoyed this, if you want to get a look at the art up close, you can find it on my portfolio page for free, or you can purchase yourself a PDF copy on my Ko-Fi page. PDF copies are also a free bonus for anyone who subscribes at the Jester tier or higher on the Ko-Fi page. Thank you all so much for joining me this evening. I tried out a more unscripted style of video this time. I think it'll end up a little longer than my normal content, and I'll just cut that line if it doesn't. If it does, let me know if you like a longer video or a shorter video. And if you'd like to see your name up here in lights just like these lovely people, be sure to take a trip to my Ko-Fi page, investigate the rewards, and see if you'd like to support the channel. That's all for us here at the show that no one saw. Thank you, and good night.